of them, there was this little conversation about, what, you don't understand me? Do you speak English? And so now here Ramos is talking to him, and he's saying, and he's asking him something about car doors, and he's saying, I don't speak English. And Ramos just kind of goes in with this banter. He's not really acting in a very professional way here. I don't think it takes an expert to see that. Just before this stopped, he had a chance to go ahead with an interview, to do something a little bit more constructive in terms of interviewing Kelly Thomas, or finding out what he's doing out there. He said, Kelly Thomas said, I don't know, I mean, what do you want to know? I mean, passing up this thing about I don't speak English. Ramos says, well, I want to know what kind of language you speak. Which language do you speak? So he passed that opportunity up, and he just goes ahead with this kind of banter. Go ahead to the next. Seems like every day we have to talk to you about something. Do you enjoy it? And then there's going to be sort of an exchange of sarcasm that takes place here, where Kelly says something to the effect of, "Oh yeah, I really like seeing you every day, dude. You know, I really like it." Ramos says, "Really?" And so this kind of conversation going back and forth that's really unprofessional on the part of the police officer. But what you might notice is that Officer Wolf was talking to him for a minute, came in, started talking to him. He didn't see Officer Wolf right away, but when he did, they had a little conversation. Officer Wolf said something about, I speak Cambodian. But then he asked him, well, where do you sleep? And then they started a conversation. He said, well, no, I sleep in trash cans. He said, in the Fullerton area? Yeah. So are you wanting to go to sleep pretty soon? Yeah, I'd like to. But so he's starting to do some conversation that maybe that's going to get him someplace. And then there's Ramos leaned back in the car. It seemed like we have to talk to you every day about something. Kelly Thomas is showing a little bit of an attitude toward Manuel Ramos. It's an attitude of somebody. I think what you're seeing is that Kelly Thomas thinks he's being harassed by Officer Ramos, and that's the attitude he's showing. Like somebody who's just being harassed. There's no particular reason for all of this, and he'll talk more about that a little bit later. But the unprofessional conduct as it goes through, you'll see the unprofessional conduct of Manuel Ramos makes it appear that he is being harassed. Go ahead to the next one.
we're talking about.
What does that mean? Yes or no? Does that mean yes or no? What's your idea? First name is William? Thomas?
William.
First name is William?
Yeah.
What's your last name? Billy Thomas? I thought it was B Thomas. You know? Well, I'm not going to figure out who you are. Kelly Thomas.
Manuel Ramos' name. It was Manuel Thomas believed very much that he was
Suspicion of burglary.
Suspicion of burglary?
Yeah.
Why didn't you just say like 5 minutes ago? I mean, did you want me to go down to fucking jail and sit there and understand for another 50 days that I was trying to break into something?
Yeah, good job.
You were just here fucking 5 minutes ago.
I don't know
Sitting on the bus.
I don't know your name. I was here 5 minutes ago.
Seems like a fucking hobby.
Good job. You tell me your name and all that.
Did you guys ever think about that?
Maybe we can move on. Well, I know your name.
No, I'd like to.
You don't want to tell me your name?
I bet you. I don't know, dude.
I forgot your name, man.
I forgot too.
But it makes more sense that I forgot your name because it's not my name. Jimmy. Let me see your jail and figure out from that.
You know what? I don't want to go.
Okay, then you tell me your name.
I think your backpack has your name on it. No, why did you want to see this stuff? You just gotta figure your name so we can get out of here and go about our business and go sleep. That's all.
so. Kelly Thomas wasn't even asked if they could search his backpack. If you heard that, he said, Officer Wolf said, "Oh, might there be anything, or is there anything in your backpack with your name on it?" Kelly said, "Why, do you want to search it and stuff?" And so he just took it. I took it off by himself, gave him his backpack. So, he's compliant with the police here. He's not happy. He's not having a good time. He thinks he's being harassed. He apparently doesn't believe that Officer Ramos doesn't know his name, and so they're having all that exchange about that. And this latest part of the conversation, they're saying, the police officers are saying, "Hey, come on, just give us your name, and we can get out of here. We can all go about our business." So that makes it sound like there's nothing very important going on. Go ahead.
Come over here. Have a seat right there, brother. Sit down. Sit down. The little brick curb there. Sit down.
I told you, I put speaking close.
Tell first my hand. We want to confuse them. Go ahead. Well, sit down. You can search your bag.
Okay, that's fine.
Let's go there. Put your feet out in front of you.
You want my stomach?
Cross your ankles. Hands on your knees. Hands on your knees. Put your feet out in front of you. One at a time. Cross your ankles. Put your hands on your knees.
Hands on my knees?
Okay. You can go in reverse. Feet out in front of you, number one. Feet out in front of you.
Okay.
Now cross your ankles, number two. Number three, put your hands on your knees. Level with your feet. There you go. Just like that. What's your first name?
I give it away. I'm done talking. You can call like Ron or somebody down.
Put your hands on your knees. All you want to do is figure out who you are, your name. You told me it before, but I forgot.
Well, I forgot you.
Okay? The only way I can figure who you are is take you to jail.
Take me to jail. I'm just
Well, you go to suspicion of burglary. You can sit in jail for 30 days and you figure it out.
Huh?
You can sit in jail for 30 days or so until they figure it out.
That's okay with you. Is that what?
I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. It's gonna be me in there, it'll be you. And I don't have to deal with each other here for the next 30 days.
Hey, shit. Did you go over your report? My freaking name, dude?
Yeah.
What did it say?
What's your name?
Have a good day.
What you gonna drink today?
I didn't drink anything today.
It's some alcohol.
You want to have a beer?
You want a beer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just simple. Ronnie, is that your name? Ronnie?
No. I don't know. It's not fun, dude.
That's what's your name?
Just get fucking cheated, dude. How they got my mom, dude. What was I help a homeless person?
No, every homeless person has a name. What name was on your ID? Because I can find it for you.
James.
James what?
Thomas.
What's your birthday date from?
It's, I forgot it.
You're not from me.
You want my balls?
Hmm?
You want my balls?
What?
You want my balls? Are they too big, dude? Are they scary?
Yeah.
Really? That's refreshing.
Yeah. Scared when I'm running people who've been drinking and you don't know their name, you can't answer the questions. Scares me. How's for me to be concerned? You may take me to jail. I'm not sure if I can leave you alone that way.
Well,
Hey, what's up, Dave? I didn't recognize you, man. Glad to see you doing all right. I didn't recognize you, bro. No hair, clean shave.
I used to took it all off so that, I don't know, find something new.
You look good.
What's up with this guy? You alright? Are you okay?
You know, man. You know how it is.
Winos and stuff.
You know how it is. All right, Dave. Take it easy, man. See you, buddy.
Take a good call, Grandma. Don't take no bitch.
All right, bro.
When the guy starts giving $20, don't take it. Take a good call.
See you, man. Hey, come on. Get up. You keep that out further.
see me in jail, dude. Just, you know, please, we just go.
All right, so after handing the backpack over to the police officers, both police officers, well, particularly Officer Ramos, tells Kelly Thomas to go sit down over there, and he looks over there and apparently doesn't see what appears to him to be a place to sit, and he says, "Where?" Over by that little on that little brick curb, and so he goes over there, and you can see it's just a low brick curb. He doesn't want to sit there. He doesn't want to sit there. But the importance of this is that he stands there for a short time, not wanting to sit down, and they tell him, "Sit down, so we can do our job." So while he's standing there, Officer Ramos says, comes over, starts walking towards him and says, "Hey, come on, don't force my hand." And then what does he do? He sits down. He says, "Okay, okay," and he sits. Well, the importance of that is that was a warning given by Manuel Ramos, and he gave Kelly Thomas some place and room to comply, and he did comply. He sat down. Sat on the little brick curb, and where he's, as you can see that, where he is. Then there's a lot of talk about Kelly Thomas's name. Manuel Ramos gives a lot of direction to Kelly Thomas at this point about how to sit. Feet out in front of you, ankles crossed, hands on your knees. And they go back and forth. It kind of goes back and forth. And you make your own judgment about it. But it appears that Kelly Thomas is confused about following all those rules. Which one do you want me to do? And it's all at the same time, and he didn't quite get that. But he does when it's broken down, first do this, now do that, now do that. He does follow the rules. One at a time he gets there. He gets into that position. But he sits there just for a very short time, and then he's out of the position again. He moves his feet in, and he gets kind of like he is here. There's a number of things about this. One is that Kelly Thomas, Manuel Ramos gives these orders, and they're kind of these sort of complicated orders, and do they make sense to Kelly Thomas or not? Not too clear. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But he doesn't follow through on the orders. He doesn't act in a professional way here, and make sure that he's in control of the situation, and that his orders are in fact complied with. In fact, even at one point he's talking to that passerby, and he's not really paying much attention to Kelly Thomas at all at that point. And when that person leaves, Kelly Thomas reaches over and gets his shoes and starts putting his shoes on. And there's very little direction or complaint by Manuel Ramos about that. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" But he's not in a professional way controlling the situation to make sure that everything stays the way it should stay. Why do I keep harping on, well, this is unprofessional police work, this is sloppy police work? What? Because it yield good results. It just doesn't. Bad police work is destined to lead bad results. Sloppy, unprofessional police work is at best negligent. At best, negligent police work. So there's these conversations about his name, a lot of conversation about Kelly Thomas's name. There's this odd conversation. A little bit earlier, Kelly Thomas said something about his stomach. "You like my stomach," or something like that, and then that didn't get a response. And then he says that, and then that didn't get a response. And then he says, and then Manuel Ramos responds that they do. He says, "Yeah, it scares me," and he starts talking about how he's scared of people who won't tell him his name or something like that. But he's obviously not scared. And he's just saying it's just part of the conversation. You can see the way he's standing there and the way all of this takes place. I think it's important to note in this part of the encounter that Kelly Thomas doesn't represent a threat, not representing a threat whatsoever to Officer Ramos or to anyone. He's pretty much compliant. You can see the Officer Ramos doesn't have any view that Kelly Thomas might be threatening in some way. You know, he's just standing there, his legs are crossed. He's not concerned about it. Kelly Thomas is protesting about being harassed. He's asking him, what, you know, like, why am I here? What do you do? What do I throw shit at you every day or something? Am I drunk on the street? He's asking him stuff like that. Like, you know, what are you doing? All right, go to the next stop. All right, so you can see how this is going. It's just the same old kind of banter back and forth. What's your name? Just tell us your name. Tell me your name, and we can all leave. Go ahead to the next stop.
The other reason why I said, because this one here can't see whole, turning it long, and this is the dude's male, turning it long. He's got two of them. Yeah. So I'm thinking suspicion 496. So we're gonna be.
All right, so Manuel Ramos goes to the trunk of the car, and he has a conversation with Officer Wolf, who's back there looking through the backpack, and Officer Wolf finds some mail that has the name of an attorney on it, Casey Hull, and he's thinking, well, this looks like this might be stolen property. It's in that backpack, and it doesn't look like it belongs to Kelly Thomas. Now, you know, this is some reason. I wouldn't argue about whether or not there's probable cause to make an arrest at that point. It's some reason that an arrest could be made. It's not much reason. It's thin reason. But you could make an arrest on that basis. But look at the dynamics here. Officer Wolf isn't ready to make an arrest yet. He wants to look into it. He wants to find out. Maybe we can check with the department and see whether or not this Casey Hall is the victim of a theft. That's not Manny Ramos's attitude. Manny Ramos is saying, fucking take him for $496. $496 is receiving stolen property. So look, if they would have, what was Kelly Thomas doing? He was just sitting there waiting. He wasn't. He was sitting there waiting, kind of rubbing his hands on his hair, waiting to see what was going to happen. He's not doing anything. He's not being a threat. They could have looked into what would happen if they took the backpack and spent some more time, take it to the station, find out what's going on with this backpack. They could do that. They would have found Casey Hall, who threw the mail in the trash, so that wasn't stolen property, and they could find Jim Pugh, who left the backpack in the parking lot. So it didn't come from a burglary or a robbery or anything like that. It was just left in the parking lot. Now I agree it wasn't abandoned there, and a person could be charged for a crime taking property like that from the parking lot, but it kind of that's not, but it's not a big dangerous deal or anything. It's kind of small. What if they did that? What if they let Kelly Thomas go while they investigated it? You've seen from the evidence that they can arrest him anytime they want. He's always around. Ramos can't get rid of him. Every time he turns around, there he is, Kelly Thomas again. Kelly Thomas says, I see you every 5 minutes. I'm sure he doesn't see him every 5 minutes, but he probably sees him quite a bit. So I guess the point is that there's not much reason for an arrest here. There's some reason, but Ramos doesn't need much reason. He doesn't need much reason. And look at how he behaves. From this point forward. By the way, what about
the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the people of this greatest of counties
from this establishment called the Slide Bar, and there was a claim that they had seen somebody had seen Kelly Thomas walking around the parking lot trying car doors. That doesn't even seem to have any importance to Manuel Ramos. He asked a couple of questions about it, but he didn't look into it at all. He didn't do anything to see if there's any cars broken into, any glass around, or talk to the victim, or do any of that stuff. And right now, it's all set aside. He doesn't even care about it anymore. He wants to get in there, and he wants to go hands-on with Kelly Thomas. Why? Once they have that conversation at the trunk, it's his unwavering direction to go to get hands on Kelly Thomas. Maybe he was angry about all the lip that he got in the last 15 minutes. We don't know that, but this it's not a productive thing. It's an angry thing. He's probably already tired of him because he's always around, and he's telling Kelly Thomas. He's told him several times, what is it? What is it you don't understand about my orders? I keep telling you to get out of here, telling you to go to Placentia. Is there something you don't understand about what it is I have to say to you? So there's some irritation there. There's unhappiness with Kelly Thomas. He wants to get Kelly Thomas out of town, right? Looks a lot more like some kind of punishment coming the way of Kelly Thomas than a legitimate arrest. It really does. The things that he's saying to Kelly Thomas now are not the words of a police officer making a legitimate arrest. Now, when a police officer makes an arrest, if he's going to make an arrest for a felony, does he have to say something to the person he's arresting about the arrest? Well, Yes, he does. Is this on? Here's an instruction that you've received. It's about lawful performance of a police officer's duties. I'm going to talk about this instruction a little bit more as we go forward. But this is about an arrest. And when an officer is making an arrest, he must tell the person that he's arresting that he intends to arrest him, why the arrest is being made, and the authority for the arrest. Now, there's some exceptions to that. The exceptions are if he has probable cause to believe that the person is presently committing a crime, or if the person is fleeing immediately after the commission of a crime, or if he's escaped from custody. None of those exceptions apply here. None of them. They're looking into this to see whether or not he had committed a crime. They're not here going into a burglary in progress or a robbery in progress or some kind of a situation where you have this emergency that you need to arrest somebody without saying anything. It's just not the case. Kelly Thomas is sitting there. I mean, the words, how easy would it be for Officer Ramos to say something to the nature of well, there's property in your backpack that appears to be stolen. So I'm placing you under arrest for receiving stolen property under Section 496 of the Penal Code. And that's it. That's all the elements right there. They say, you know, please cooperate while I take you into custody. But so he didn't do that. So as we go forward, I'm going to point out, look at his actions and his words. We're not going to move forward just yet with the video. Got a few things to say about it. So clearly, these are not the actions and the words of a police officer making a legitimate arrest. They're just not. He comes up there. He's got his gloves out. He's starting to get ready to put them on, and he says, "I'm not fucking around anymore, dude. I try to be nice." I try to be nice? I tried to be nice. So what does that mean? You're somebody sitting there, and you're sitting on a little brick curb, and this officer, this officer, standing over you, and he's putting on these gloves, and he's saying, "I'm through fucking around. I try to be nice." Try to be nice. That sends a very clear message. Being nice is over. I tried to be nice. I'm going to be mean now. That's what he's saying. Couple that with the manner of his attitude, with the way that he's standing there, the way that he's putting the gloves on. Putting the gloves on, all that means is, there's only one meaning for that. It means there's going to be contact. Contact is coming, right? That's all it means. I mean, that officer's not, why do people put their gloves on? He's not putting his gloves on because his hands are cold on on this warm summer night, July 5th, 2011. He's put gloves on to handle something, to handle Kelly Thomas. It's an unequivocal statement of intent. It's an unequivocal statement of intent to Kelly Thomas that he intends to handle Kelly Thomas, that he intends to put his hands on Kelly Thomas. He's going to do something, and he's already said it's not going to be nice. I'm not Mr. Nice Guy anymore. And by the way, it's meant as a statement to Kelly Thomas, isn't it? I mean, this isn't, Kelly Thomas didn't just, it's not somebody in that position doesn't just understand it like that, maybe misunderstanding. No, no, this is meant as a clear statement to Kelly Thomas. He's over him. Kelly Thomas is in a vulnerable position. He's putting the gloves on in his face, snapping them on. It's a strong statement. It's a statement that once the gloves are on, right? I got these gloves on now. I'm ready. The time is coming. It's very close now. We're ready to go to contact here. And he said so. He said so. Because the next thing that he did was go over to Kelly Thomas, lean over him with his fist, put his fist in his face, and that's when he makes this threat that we've been going over many times during the course of this trial. But he puts his fist in his face and he says, you see these fists? Yeah, what about them? They're getting ready to fuck you up. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having a police officer say something like that when you're sitting there, you're on a little low curb that big, you're trying to comply with the various things he's telling you to do, and now he's got the gloves on, and he's right there, and he says, you know, he's ready to fuck you up, ready to F you up. What does that mean? What does that mean? I'm ready to F you up. Well, that means I'm going to beat you up severely. That means that there's going to be injuries here. You know, when you say somebody's going to be effed up, you're not going to get slapped around a little bit or a little roughing up. This is going to be a severe beating. There's going to be injuries, and you're going to be subjected to this. And it's coming right now. And that's how Kelly Thomas understood it. That's how he understood it. Because the next thing he said is, start punching dude. Start punching dude. So he didn't say, I'll go ahead and put the handcuffs on. This was about punching and getting him effed up. He knew that. Look, Kelly Thomas knows that an arrest means, you know, if it's a legitimate arrest, you know, he's gonna get cuffs on and he's gonna be taken into custody. He offered that a little while earlier, so he certainly knows about being arrested. But this conversation is about punching and hitting and causing damage to the person of Kelly Thomas. Everything's entirely different now than that first time when he offered to go into custody. This is punishment. It's punching out. It's beating. It's getting effed up. So Kelly Thomas says it sucks. And Ramos says, yeah. All right, they're signaling to each other. They know what this means. This sucks. Yeah. That's what transpired. Immediately before Defendant Ramos started forcefully pushing Kelly Thomas around, shoving his arm and pushing him, and that he's in that vulnerable position that he's in. Go ahead to the next slide.
Which one is it? You go. I can't do it.
But you're gonna have to go real quick. Put your hands on your knees. No. Do my face? Yeah, what do you want? You're getting ready to fuck me up. Stop punching, dude. You want to fuck me up? Put your fucking hands on your knees.
Well, hey, I'm sick of playing games. Which one is it? Put your fucking hands on your knees. Would you just fucking put your hands on your knees? All right.
All right, at this juncture, I think you need to look at what's happening here from the point of view of both people. What's happening from the point of view of the police officer? What's happening from the point of view of a reasonable person in the position of Kelly Thomas? First, the police officer, right? Defendant Ramos is an officer with 10 years of experience in law enforcement at Fullerton Police Department. And no question about it, he has a good working knowledge of the basics, the basic requirements, the basic rules of the use of force. There's just no question about that. He's been there for 10 years. So what are some of the basics about the use of force by a police officer? Can I turn this on? A peace officer may use reasonable force to arrest or detain someone, to prevent escape, to overcome resistance, or in self-defense. So a peace officer can use reasonable force for these reasons: prevent escape, overcome resistance, or in self-defense, or to arrest or detain someone. He can't use, there's no authority for using force of any kind to punish someone. There's no authority to use force for street justice. Police officer can't get mad at somebody and start punching him around or use any kind of force on him at all. Defendant Ramos knows that. He knows very well. And he knows that his language and his words threaten. He knows that they threaten the imminent use of unlawful force against Kelly Thomas. In fact, they were meant to do so. I mean, that was the reason he did those things, and the reason he said those things was to put fear into the heart and mind of Kelly Thomas. He did all that in order to create that fear, and he did create that fear. He created a fear. He created a danger. Anybody in Kelly Thomas's position would know that he's in imminent danger of being exposed to the use of unreasonable and unlawful force by the police. The gloves, the hostile demeanor, all that can be understood no other way. This is just a brazen threat against Kelly Thomas. Just a threat to beat the daylights out of him. So any officer, not just Officer Ramos certainly knew what he was doing, and any reasonable police officer in the position of Officer Ramos would know that. Any reasonable police officer in the position of Officer Ramos would know that he just created in Kelly Thomas a right to use self-defense. So if a police officer uses reasonable force to arrest or detain, then he can do that. That's within the scope of his duties. But if he uses excessive or unreasonable force, then he's not lawfully performing his duties. And this is Instruction Calcrim Lawful Performance. It's entitled Calcrim 2670. It's in your package of instructions. And this is very important right here. A peace officer uses unreasonable, if a peace officer uses unreasonable or excessive force while arresting or attempting to arrest or detaining or attempting to detain a person, that person may lawfully use reasonable force to defend himself. A person being arrested uses reasonable force when he reasonably believes that he's in imminent danger of unreasonable or excessive force by a police officer. So I don't know. I mean, a lot of people don't seem to understand this idea, but the police know. They know that if they're not lawfully performing their duty, they know that if they're using excessive force, that a person has a right to self-defense. So a person has a right to resist. You have a right to resist an unlawful arrest. Or you have a right to resist an arrest that's being done with excessive force. By the way, that's if you think this is an arrest. You have to stretch a little bit to find this to be an arrest. He didn't say he's arresting him. He doesn't act like he's arresting him. He just acts like he's using excessive force. So it's during a detention, and he's threatening excessive force, and he's using it. So Kelly Thomas stands up and starts backing away. So what about this conditional threat idea? we hear about conditional threat. So I guess the idea is that, well, Ramos said, if you don't start listening. So that turns it into some kind of a threat called a conditional threat. What? If you don't start listening. So I mean, what does that mean? What do you think that means, a conditional threat? I mean, it means the only clear way I think it could be explained is that okay, I'm threatening you with some kind of serious conduct, but I'm only going to do it if you perform the condition. I'm only going to do it if you don't perform the condition that I'm about to give you. However, if you don't do that condition, then I'm going to carry out my threat. That's what it means, right? So what about this, if you don't start listening? First of all, a police officer doesn't have a right to F somebody up, period. I mean, the police officer doesn't have a right to go about, beating the hell out of somebody savagely in making an arrest. He's really only allowed to use that force that's reasonably necessary to make the arrest. So here, this is even worse. He's saying, if you don't start listening, does that make it okay? I mean, is there some way, if you don't start listening, that makes it okay? To turn that into something justifiable, you'd have to say that, well, if Kelly Thomas doesn't start listening, then it's okay for Manuel Ramos to beat the hell out of him if he doesn't listen. But the police officer doesn't have a right to beat somebody up for failure to listen. That's not in our, where does that come from? It doesn't come from the law. It doesn't come from reason. That's just not what you can do here. So this is nonsense about the conditional threat, this conditional threat idea. It's just nonsense. All this is, it's just a brazen threat to beat the living daylights out of Kelly Thomas, period. That's what it is. The actions and the words, all of that together, the body language, all of that together of Manuel Ramos make this a grave threat. It's a grave and imminent threat. Not the words of a police officer making a lawful arrest or instructing the individual. Ramos knows that's the case because he's a police officer. He's been a police officer for 10 years. Any reasonable person in the position of Ramos would know that he's putting Kelly Thomas in reasonable fear of imminent use of excessive force by the police. Any reasonable person in the position of defendant Ramos would also know that an individual has a right to self-defense against the use of excessive force by the police. From Kelly Thomas's point of view, sure, this is fine.
Please remain in your seats until the jury